everybody. Welcome back to the Zoom, where we zoom in on thought leaders in the channel today. I'm your host, Chris Shubert, and today I have as my special guest, Jason Gintert of Wan Dynamics, a company that you may not have heard of, but that is absolutely changing the game for us in the CNSG community. Jason, welcome.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Great to have you. So I guess the first thing I'd like to know about is a little bit about your background, because as one of the co-founders of Wan Dynamics, we really get the opportunity to talk to someone that has actually founded a company, and more importantly, founded one in an extremely competitive industry. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to founding Wan Dynamics.
Sure. So I guess my roots go back to the dial-up days. Back in '99, I started in this industry doing dial-up tech support, and have seen many iterations of the service provider network. So back in that day, it was dedicated circuits that would be fanned out across the WAN, and then it moved into frame relay, and then frame relay to MPLS, and then we saw the evolution to SD-WAN. And so I was actually helping manage products at a regional service provider that was acquired by Fusion. And, I had encountered this thing called SD-WAN when I was selling MPLS at that carrier, and it just blew my mind. I didn't know what to do about it. And my sales guy asked me, "We got this, right? We've got a solid MPLS offering. We should be able to beat this SD-WAN thing." I'm like, "I don't know, man. This is pretty darn cool. I don't know what to say against it, to be honest." And the more research I did, the more I learned about it, the more I realized that this was significant, and that SD-WAN was really going to change the way the connectivity for business functioned. Mm-hmm. So, with that, after the company I worked for, Fidelity Voice and Data, was acquired by Fusion, I gave it a shot for a little while at a bigger carrier, but decided, you know what, I learned a lot about this SD-WAN thing. I think this is the future of connectivity, and so we jumped off and launched our own telco independent managed SD-WAN company, and the rest is history. So it's been a great run, and I really strongly believe that we made a good choice, and that SD-WAN is going to be the way that companies connect from now on.
I don't doubt it in any way, shape, or form. SD-WAN has been a complete game changer in the last 2 years, changing the way that we sell, changing the way the customers buy. And Wan Dynamics has been at the center of that for CNSG. So tell us a little bit about the company itself. It's definitely not a name that most people recognize, but it's become incredibly important to the CNSG community.
Yeah, so we are, a managed and professional services house that's focused on just primarily network services. So not so much the circuits of connectivity itself, but actually the integration of networks and making them operate correctly. So the complex parts, like figuring out what dynamic routing protocols to use to stitch networks together, whether or not to use MPLS here or DIA or broadband, and making all of those things work confluently. And seamless to the customer. So giving our clients really a seamless experience when it comes to connectivity, because we just take care of everything behind the scenes. So, we're the man behind the curtain, as it were, that makes it all look easy. And, we have a talented bench of engineers that do just that. So we really make seamless WAN connectivity for customers, and cloud connectivity as well, which that's rapidly emerging as primary use cases for our clients with SD-WAN is getting back to their cloud applications and making sure that performance is good for those. So we make sure that is just so as seamless as possible for the client.
Well, one of the things I think is interesting about your company, as Wan Dynamics, you fall in that category of Pureplay, or best of breed, a company that focuses really on just the core premise of taking care of the managed network. You don't do connectivity. You're not a UCaaS provider. You just focus on kicking it with the network. And that's proven to be very, very popular in the channel. Why do you feel that that type of pure play environment has been so popular versus the all-in-ones?
Because we can focus on what we're good at. We don't spread ourselves too thin and try to do too many things. We know connectivity really well. All of our guys are, CCNPs and senior level engineers that have worked in networks for a long time. Most of them have come from enterprise networks, and they that's all they do. So I find that a lot of other organizations that try to do too many things become mediocre at all of them. They're generalists versus specialists, and we consider ourselves specialists on networking.
Along with that idea, as you look at Wan Dynamics and the type of customers you focus on, what would you say is your sweet spot? What type of customer gravitates toward Wan Dynamics?
We work a lot with professional services organizations, so we find that those groups tend to have pretty skeleton IT staffs and need the assistance of managed services providers to help maintain their infrastructure. So the same is true, I think, of retail and manufacturing organizations we work with. Lots of multi-site companies that have lighter IT staffs and need the assistance of managing a complex network, and not just the network and the operation of the connectivity, but also security perimeter and making sure that best practices are followed and that they're locked down as well as they can be, because not everybody can afford to have a CISO inside their organization or senior level security analysts that look over their network. We have those guys on staff, not to mention as we mentioned before, senior level network expertise.
Fantastic. And I can definitely vouch for that in the interactions that CNSG's managing partners have had. They always give your team very high marks. Looking at that, in the SD-WAN and even the security marketplace, while not quite as crowded as, say, UCaaS, SD-WAN has become a very crowded market in the last 2 years, as multiple platforms have emerged, both from a wholesale resale perspective, as a lot of direct, all-in-one providers have popped up. Looking at that, where do you say that Wan Dynamics does better than any of the other competitors out there, and why do people choose you instead of maybe a big box brand that they know?
I think it comes down to the solution that we provide and the fact that we're willing to go beyond the SD-WAN box. So if you have switching integration needs, or your data center connectivity, is a little more complex than the average network, and we need to get in and really get under the hood with the rest of your network, not just the SD-WAN components, we're willing to do that. We also have been doing this for a long time, longer than some carriers have been. So we've been deploying SD-WAN networks for 4 years now. So since, it'll be 4 years probably by the time this comes out. Early 2016 we started. So it's knowing how to deploy in all of the facets of SD-WAN, because it's not as simple to deploy as some would imply. And
what are you saying? Are you saying SD-WAN can be complex?
It's true, Chris. Yeah, definitely. It's not just this plug and play. It can be. I'm not saying that it's not for everybody, but we have seen a number of very complex deployments where there was just many moving parts to that network, many legacy networks, because by acquisition, they had all of these separate networks that were disparate, and they had to stitch together somehow. So, it can be complex at times, and I think people underestimated that and thought that SD-WAN was going to be the easy button for the WAN, when just as much time in planning and consideration of the technical components, each minor detail, you really have to go through your due diligence to really make sure that you're covering all of those things, just as you would any other deployment like MPLS or frame relay or any of those technologies along the way.
But what's funny about that is you mentioned MPLS and frame relay. When we've been doing those in the channels, a lot of times those have been just switching out pipes, right? It's been adding a network, changing off a private line. That's what we got used to, and those were comparatively simple now with SD-WAN. SD-WAN, I've always big advocate for treating this as a as a IT transformational event for your company, because by the time you're done, you're bringing together generally multiple types of connectivity. You're adding in application prioritization or application layer control, depending on the platform you're going with, and and then you just add in the monster of security on top of it. You're changing the entire DNA of your network. And it still amazes me how many occasional partners and also some suppliers approach it just the same old with MPLS. With you mentioned not only Frame Relay, but you mentioned your legacy and where you've come from. Although I keep going back to Frame Relay, you just warm my heart when you use that old classic term. But as you've obviously seen the evolution from point-to-point Frame Relay to MPLS to SD-WAN. Jason, what's next? What's coming down the pike, and where do you see the next step in the SD-WAN revolution going?
That's a great question. I see this new space that Gartner coined this past summer back in 2019, something they're called SASE, which is Secure Access Service Edge. So
yeah, just when we need another acronym. I read that. I was like, really, guys? But
yeah.
Tell us all about SASE. I've heard it pronounced.
Yeah, worse yet is how it's been shortened to SASE. So you have to bear all these articles that are like security gets sassy. But I really do think that this is important, because one thing that we found was often overlooked and discounted was the implications of security in SD-WAN deployments and where that security edge happened. So we would get knee deep in the network design with the network engineers, and they would go, "Oh wait, we totally forgot to tie the security guys in on this. They need to be a part of this." And we'd have to sometimes roll back some of those plans and really start from scratch when it comes to designing where the security perimeter for the users lives. So I think that the next step in SD-WAN is going to be the tight coupling of security with it. So you're going to see on-box integration. So what I mean by that is, a SD-WAN appliance, when it's getting deployed, having some sort of security mechanism that's deployed inside of that box, and maybe it's native to the platform, maybe it's a module that gets slipped in the way of something called NFV or network functions virtualization, where they actually slip a virtual firewall right onto the same appliance. There's also a lot of cloud security integrations, so cloud firewalls from some of the big guys like Zscaler and Palo Alto. And actually, Palo Alto's got a really, really good SASE story coming down the pike. So there's a number of vendors that are starting to pivot in this direction, and I think you're going to see security become a key part of the SD-WAN conversation moving forward.
So one of the things that we love here at CNSG about Wan Dynamics is how dynamic your product line is. The fact that you offer multiple different platforms for SD-WAN and security. Jason, I'd love to hear from you just why you think having multiple platforms has been key to your success versus necessarily marrying yourself to one platform.
We're not bought into the one size fits all model. So there's many different solutions out there for different types of organizations, and they're both their security and their SD-WAN objectives. So we do represent multiple SD-WAN platforms, security platforms, and on the managed network services side, so we do manage right down to the LAN to switches, access points, all of these things. So we work with a number of what we feel are best of breed platforms. So we're not going to work with every single one out there under the sun. We've chosen some select vendors to do business with that we really feel are the best out there at what they do. But we will have a couple different flavors under each umbrella. So for security, for example, we work with Zscaler and Palo Alto and Fortinet. And then on the SD-WAN side, we work with Big Leaf and VeloCloud today. Those are some examples of what we feel are best of breed platforms that we can integrate together. So we can take those, a best of breed SD-WAN platform, mix it with a best of breed security platform, give the customer a full solution.
So let's talk about one of those customers, because in your product portfolio. You mentioned a couple different platforms. You even have a unique thing where you marry a security solution to Big Leaf, which is typically thought of as the non-security solution. Tell us about a customer that you've worked with recently and what you were able to do for them.
Sure. So we actually work with a hotel chain in Hawaii, and they have a number of sites
that was your first on-premise install, wasn't it? You flew out there, made sure that one was taken care of.
Sometimes you got to take one for the team, and you got to do the tough work that needs done when you're co-founder of a company. So I did actually go out to those locations and make sure that everything was deployed and working appropriately. But what we were able to do for them is to deploy a VeloCloud SD-WAN solution at each one of their resorts. And integrate that with Zscaler security solution. So for them, it got them, a best of breed security integration and the SD-WAN that they needed, because on Hawaii, there can be some challenges with the carriers as far as getting, circuit outages resolved quickly. So, the pace of life moves at a little bit differently out there, and they had a few occasions where circuits would be down for days, and so they really needed something in place that was more resilient and also was able to steer and integrate applications. And then we're also looking at a second phase with them where we're doing more of the secure access service edge integrations. So they're actually looking at some Palo Alto that might integrate on box at the sites as well for some of that inter VLAN and site-to-site traffic. So, they were what I would consider as a big success story for us in the retail arena, where we were able to, lock things down, because, what's hitting organizations today on this, from a security standpoint, are these ransomware outbreaks that can just cripple an organization. And for them, that was a big driving factor, is to make sure that they were completely secured end to end, and made sure that an outbreak could not cripple and take down their entire organization.
We don't talk enough about security, and we darn sure don't talk enough about ransomware, which is a major problem for a lot of organizations, and not just not just the Fortune 100. It can be just like a hotel chain, because someone gets in there, locks you out of your system, and then you're in deep trouble. And that's why a good security solution, as well as a great backup solution, is so critical. I'm curious, with that particular customer being in Hawaii, did you end up doing a high availability solution for those guys, or did you advise for that?
We advised for it. There were some locations that required it and some that didn't. So they have a good mix of HA and non-HA, but they do have cold sparing out there as well. And really, it was a matter of a solution, providing a solution. So, working with the customer to identify all of their locations, the applications in place, and figuring out what works, because it's not always cookie cutter. So for them, there were some larger sites that required it and justified having HA, and then there were some other locations that maybe didn't, and so it was a good mix of both.
And that's something for our channel partners here to always remember. And when you're reaching out to an SD-WAN provider like Wan Dynamics, is don't be afraid to have the HA discussion. It's not doubling or tripling the cost, as some folks immediately think it does. And in an age where so much of our equipment today is drop shipped, you don't want to, if they're mission critical, you can't put it in the hands of UPS or FedEx doing their job, because if anyone's going to drop the ball, it's not going to be Wan Dynamics, it's going to be FedEx, right?
That's right.
I fictionally just got sued on the podcast, by the way. But I do absolutely encourage you guys to look into those types of solutions with Wan Dynamics. And along that line, Jason, what's the best way to engage with your team if you're a CNSG partner?
So, a lot of the CNSG folks know how to get a hold of us. I mean, certainly through, partners that you work with at CNSG. Also, you can email sales at wandynamics.com and engage with myself and our sales team. And then we have a toll-free number, 877-400-9490. Those are probably the best ways to reach out.
Fantastic. Well, Jason, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Zoom. This has been a lot of fun and a nice deep discussion on all the crazy things going on in SD-WAN, both now and in the future. I do know that wherever we go with SD-WAN, Wan Dynamics is going to have our back, and we greatly appreciate the partnership.
Thanks, Chris. As do we. We love the partnership with CNSG. You guys are fantastic, and the way that you solution sell with clients, it's really refreshing, and it's a newer perspective in the channel, and it's really working. So it really reflects the way we like to engage with customers. So we love this partnership, and I appreciate being on today.
Well, thank you, sir. And for all those listening here, make sure to check us back next week for the next episode of The Zoom. Thanks, everyone.